Good day, welcome to Reloved Guitars, and here we have an old beastie. Simon came over, brought two guitars over today. This is one of the two, and he's become a bit of an Antoria fan recently. And he's got a semi-acoustic one, and he's got this one, and this is different from the one I had recently, the little 59 one. Well, I don't know, Deluxe 59, Deluxe 59, different from that, but a kind of similar era, made in Japan. Was this one probably, don't know if this was probably still the Ibanez factory. Looks like Electra style tuners. They're not the original ones because they seem to have had Clouson style ones on originally. But bit of a gap. I mean, a bit of a join there where it maybe split off in the past. It's a, what do they call this thing? Pancake design. Two halves. I don't know if you can see the line going down lengthways down the body. Two halves. But it's a sweet thing. This is, sounds great. These are Damasio sort of 70s, vintage 70 things. It's got plastic saddles here, the original Antoria bridge though, and interestingly it's got volume, volume, tone, tone rather than more familiar volume, volume, tone, tone. It confused me a bit and I picked it up. Bound neck, it's been refretted, nice job by the look of it, just a very slight bit of, you can feel it at the edges, but I think part of the reason for that is that the person who's refretted it has refretted very tall. There's not much bevel on it, which I sort of understand because of the, you know, you want to, on an old guitar quite often you create as much space as you can for the strings. Actually, not just on an old guitar, but generally speaking. But it does leave the frets a little bit sharper, noticeable. So Simon, I'm going to plug you in, by the way, before this runs out of power. Simon brought this over with another guitar today, and he just wanted me to have a look over it, and it was annoying him because although he loves the tone of it and the feel of it, it wasn't staying in tune. It isn't staying in tune, so let's get a strap and have a look. I mean, I had it play this morning, so I pretty much got my head round what was up with it straight away, but it's principal problem with it is, as always, the nut, which is no surprise really. And not much else. The nut and the other culprit, which is the unreleased slack in the strings. And both guitars that Simon brought over were suffering from that a little bit. So, and I think in both cases Simon was thinking about changing tuners. I think I've dissuaded him a little bit on that, so that I think I've convinced him that it's almost never the tuners, practically never the tuners that are at fault. So this one needs a replacement jack socket. This one isn't right exactly. So you can see I've pulled this out of tune pretty nicely. Just going to tune it up. One of the things that Simon was kind of reporting was that one of the things that made him think the tuners were faulty is that he was turning the tuners backwards and forwards and nothing was happening to the pitch. That's quite a familiar experience. Ooh, as is that. Hopeless. Got a nice tone. Nice sounding. Let's see if it feeds back. Quite good. It's not very loud exactly, but I can see that the saddles have got different heights on them. They're not exactly very accurate. It's quite often the case on these tuniomatic bridge style things. They end up with slightly different heights to them, and you can usually see it by looking down over the strings. Right, okay, so what I also don't yet know about this guitar is, does everything play? God, I can't bend these. Okay, not too bad. This top E low E looked a little bit on the high side, but actually looking at this, I don't think this is going to move at all. One slight constraint on this, that will be a limiting factor. Yeah, it's down on the deck, so that is as low as this is going to go down on this end. Whether or not we'd want it any lower is a moot point. So it's actually quite nice, a bit sharp, quite nice all round. That's coming in at nearly 2mm, but actually not that high. I'm noticing there's quite a disparity in the heights of these saddles. There's not a lot of consistency at all actually. So we got this one high as anything, that one low, that one higher. Simon was asking this morning if there was anything about those that I would change, and for its own sake, not exactly, but possibly because they're uneven. What I'm going to do is we're going to get rid of this bone nut. Whoever's refretted has taken the time to fit a new bone nut, which is a nice thing to do, a good thing to do, but they've left it gripping a bit too much. So we agreed that we're going to stick an adjustable Tusq adjustable nut on this thing. I don't think Simon's had a guitar from me yet with that on, but I showed him this morning that it's one of the things I do on just about well, not just about, all my three-side guitars now. So let's take this off first, and we'll take this bone nut off. It's quite nicely done and everything. It's just gripping the strings, and If we didn't want to change over to this unit, we could quite simply just work away at this nut, probably free it up okay. It's not a bad thing, but this is brain off tuning stability, and since Simon really loves this guitar, I want him to have the best tuning stability possible. We were talking about keeping these strings on, doing as little as possible to this anyway, but keeping those strings on. But we were proceeding on the basis that if something needs to be done to it, then we'll do it. So right now, I'm not sure exactly what the kind of limits are of what needs doing. We could shim this very slightly to give us back a bit of room. What it depends on whether this actually raises up at all, or whether it's completely. Wow, I have a feeling this got a strong feeling this doesn't actually go anywhere, which is a bit worrying. Let's just take these out a minute. Possibly this one. Nope. Yikes! It's fixed in place. So there's no adjustment at all possible on this, which is weird. So even if we were to shim this at all, we've literally got no room. There's no point, because we'd be just guessing. Well, there is a point, but we'd have to be guessing, and I think that would be a bit hit and miss, which is a shame. I think it'd be good to replace this, and we're going to go with one of these not delightful, what do you call them, adjustable Tusq nuts. One of those things Simon was saying to me, you know, from a resale point of view, would it matter to somebody? And some people would find it too unorthodox. Obviously it won't look like this slug-like shape. I'm going to sand it down to fit in here perfectly. But for some people it wouldn't be great, because it's non-traditional and they wouldn't want it. But then again, at the worst, it's only a replacement. So there you go. Thank you. So we keep this. And at some point somebody can refit that if they really want to. Now, just going to have a quick look at the front surface of this. We want it as clean as possible. Without any glue on it. And then basically I'm going to just work with this and some sanding board, sanding, whatever that thing is called, flat surface block. And we'll get this playing nicely. Won't take too long because I've made these quite small. Like I say, a bit nervous about this, a bit unhappy about this with the different heights. It's possible that we could actually cut these down if necessary. I'm just wondering if somebody's got them on the wrong way round. Sometimes they do, but it's difficult to show, or difficult to say. If we were to look at the profile across here, it's a bit harder to see than it is to see when you've got the strings there. Yeah, difficult to see why that one's so much higher, but I can see that it is. Partly, one of the things about that one is it's got a shallower notch in it, so I think we could probably improve it by using the nut files, taking the notch down a little bit. I think that's just going to have to be an eyeballing thing, otherwise it's just going to be quite difficult. So we'll leave that on there for a minute. So we've got our truss rod cover there. The one thing I didn't check was the truss rod setting, but I'll check that in a minute. So let's get out the sanding block, which has got some gunge on it from the previous job. Okay, so with this, it's quite cool. We've got a front edge and we've got a back edge to this nut, and it's tilting upwards, which is how it should be. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sand down to get a nice right angle on the front edge of this, and I do it by moving around rather than moving the piece, if you get what I mean. Swaying, it's very therapeutic. Sway from side to side. Sand like no one's watching, apart from people on the internet. So this this adjustable nut business is something that struck me as a thing to do when I noticed Tusq making these adjustable nuts, and I can't remember exactly when I first saw them, but it was coincidental at the same time as there's a point where Gibson had started putting a sort of brass 0 fret arrangement on their Les Pauls, because I think it could have been that they had so much bad feedback about the nuts on their Les Pauls and the tuning stability, the terrible tuning stability. And anyway, so somebody at Gibson has obviously done a clever bit of thinking out, what are we going to do to get around this? Our brand reputation is suffering. So what they did was they came up with a 0 fret, a brass 0 fret arrangement type of thing. And it's hard to show while I'm doing this or describe, but that's good. They made a cradle, a base, and in that base stood a kind of upside down C-shaped thing extruded to go across as a nut. On the back edge was slots to space the strings. On the front edge was a single brass 0 fret or rail, which acted as a 0 fret. And the idea was that there were 2 grub screws, and you could lower and raise this thing to wherever you needed it to be. And it was a brilliant idea, and I mean it was a natural, sensible idea. It made, had the best of the 0 fret, that gives you a great first fret action without having to work at it, because it just uses the geometry of the guitar to do it. And it was adjustable too, which was really sensible, so people could set their own first fret action to taste. The only problem with this device is that they made it from brass. The problem with the 0 fret is the 0 fret is always subject to extra wear, because the strings are always touching the 0 fret. And so as a result of this, it wore even quicker than a nickel steel 0 fret would have done, and that they wear ridiculously fast as well, quickly. So this thing wore even quicker, and so that Gibson found owners with badly notched nuts matron very quickly, after buying their guitars. So it wasn't ideal at all. It's a problem on regular or any guitar, even ones with nickel steel. If you have something like a Brian May, is this even cut square? Let's have a close look at this. Not quite. We're missing a bit in the corner. Yeah, something like the Brian May Red Special, which I had for a little while. That has a 0 fret, and basically that notched, almost straight away. Same with Steinbergs, in the 80s, they all had 0 frets, the headless ones. Anyway, so an inherent problem with the 0 fret, because the string sits on it all the time. So making the 0 fret out of brass was just never going to work. So anyway, Gibson, I think, responded by making a replacement out of titanium, which is pretty cool material, I suppose, for the job, but not terribly useful in terms of cost. Somebody who's already bought this guitar and now is having to pay. No, I don't know if they charged their customers. Maybe they gave them away free. Anyway, they were made of titanium, so they were nice and solid, did the job, but pretty costly for all concerned. Anyway, while they were thinking up a solution, Tusq came up with this Tusq, or Graphtec came up with this Tusq adjustable insert, which was very cool, because unlike the Gibson, it wasn't based on 0 fret. They used the Gibson cradle, or the frame if you like, the base of the Gibson nut, and they designed an insert to fit in that. So their little insert coupled with the Gibson brass base gave you back a sort of more traditional looking nut made of Tusq, which is a very good little invention indeed, because it was presumably a fraction of the price of a titanium Gibson titanium replacement nut. So as soon as I saw these things on the market, I thought, oh, I could use one of those. So I got a couple and set about having an experiment with what kind of materials would work well with this, and I found that Milliput, that modelling clay, was pretty good. It has to be only hard enough for these grub screws to press down and lift it off the ground, but it doesn't actually have to be much harder than this, which is pretty good. So I started making a few, trying them out. Say I've had them on all my 3-a-side guitars since, and actually I wouldn't go back from it. It's turned out to be perfect for what I need, so hence I often recommend it to customers. And so this is the hard part, just getting this, keeping my hands on it, getting it shaped correctly for the slot in question. So we just need to very small modifications just to tilt it forward a little bit more, change the angle. And the nice thing about this is that these Milliput bases aren't that difficult to make. I mean, they only take, if you use Milliput, it takes ideally 24 hours, but there's another kind of stuff that's practically the same, but it dries much quicker, which you can use as well. So anyway, but you know, you can plan and make multiple bases for your adjustable nuts. So as I've done here, here's one I made earlier, obviously. And then the idea is you just, whilst watching carefully to the profile or the shape of the piece you're working to, the slot you're working to, you just work this to the right angles carefully and then fit it. And the idea is, with the screws out, so the nut's sitting down as far as it can, all you need to do is you just need to shape it down low enough so that the strings sit on the first fret, and then basically your job then is to raise them upwards from there to whatever preferred playing action you want over the first fret. So I'm looking at this now, and if I'm not sure, I can just, can't see very well maybe, just lift that up and I can see that it's still way too tall. So I'm just going to spin this round, use the cleaner side over here. And just keep gently taking it down until we're at the right height, keeping an eye on the angles so they're all good. That feels like it's sitting quite nicely. A bit more take off. Let's just check one more thing. I'm going to just clean up that corner in there because it's not quite right angles. Good to have this thin, very small chisel. It's great for getting these little final 90-degree angles tidied up so you get a good fit. Okay, it's starting to look just about about right. Still a bit tall. So. Just takes time, that's all. As we come down lower, then you can test it out by putting 2 of the strings in place. That's not right, over the top. Put 2 strings and tighten them up so the force is in the middle. Basically that will pull the nut into the centre. So we're not far off, but it's still too tall. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take it down a bit more, and then I'm going to get a closer look up at the condition of that slot, just to make sure. Now, right, I need to go forwards a bit now. Now, it's when you're near the end that you have to be most careful of the angles. So I'm going to just tilt this forward now a bit more. Bring the angle back to where I need it to be. Okay, and you feel when it's sitting nicely. That's pretty nicely seated. And we'll just put these strings on it. Now say, ideally when this is tight, we want that touching, and that's pretty much touching right there. So all I want to do now is concentrate on just making sure the nut slot is tidy, and I might even switch to close-up specs and even turn some light over here just to get a close look at the corner, and then just help to keep it sharp. And then the little bits of glue like that, take them away. It doesn't have to be too much tweaking, it's that corner, the angle that really needs to be clear, and then you'll get a good seated fit. Okay, so I'm just looking on this side. Right, so what I'm seeing is that actually this isn't a straight cut. There's a kind of curl on this. It's been slightly, I don't know what the word would be, mangled somewhere in the past. That sits there. You could do a tiny bit more shaping. I'll say if this doesn't work out, we can always switch to another one and have another go. I'm just going to try and tilt this forward just a fraction from where it is. Okay, that's just like modifying the angle just a little bit. That feels good. Yep, happy with that. Right, now we get a little bit of glue. This is nice and worn, this old neck. Again, it's been refretted, but when the person refretted it, they left it as was. They didn't refresh the fingerboard particularly. Personally, I might have done that because I quite like the refresh it brand new feel that you can do. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so that's down at the stops, no problem. that will then press directly onto the wood underneath, which is absolutely fine. So this is just really a spacer, this thing now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some glue, a couple of little bits of glue on here, and I'm going to go one just to the inside of there, and one just, well, I thought it was going to be to the inside of there. Okay. Right, let's get this on track. Oh, my stomach. Right, a little bit of tissue paper, clean it up. Okay, so just to get that to sit down, we'll get some strings on it. Hang on, what's happening here? Come on, slack. Don't want it to go off sideways. Put some more force into it. Now this is hitting the deck, which is hitting the first fret, which is what I wanted it to do, so that's fine. These are all playing just fractionally, but they're just about the right height. Anything, so long as it's just slightly below the target end height is fine, and we are below on all frets, including one or two of them touching the deck, which is just fine. So now the fun part is we get our adjuster and we just press down, and there we go. That's interesting. I'm just looking. That's pretty good. Oh, that's why, because that's so slack. I was going to say that one's higher than the others, but it ain't. There we have it. Sorted. That's it. Let's get it in tune. Roughly. So the point about this now is that once we've stretched the strings back out, which we'll always get a bit more slack in them once we've slackened them off and put them back on, once they're stretched out, you won't hear any pinging from this kind of nut. It will be really stable, and we can leave it at this height as it is, or we can, if we want to, we can even drop it down a tiny fraction from there and have an even lower first fret action. It's the adjustments are marginal, I mean very small indeed, but we have the freedom to do it. I think I'm going to have a close look at these saddle slots. The problem with them is they're uneven. Okay, so all I'm seeing really, the worst offender is this one, but it's probably going to be this one too. I mean, maybe they've gone up in pairs, they go up in pairs, but it's not so bad on that side. So anyway, it's still an ugly jump, which makes this look crappy. The main thing about this bridge is whether this is intonated or not. Currently it doesn't look very accurate, so let's just check that quickly and see. And if it's really off, then we might be wanting to take out the bridge anyway and try and spin these round. It may also be that these don't turn around, these don't remove, these saddles don't come off very easily, in which case we might be in a difficult spot. This looks to me in the wrong place. I'm expecting this to be sharp. Maybe a little bit. Expecting this one to be sharp. Yeah. Okay, well, that's not too bad. That's kind of in keeping with what I expected in terms of the pattern. So these are just positioned wrong. The downside about this one is that we may find it difficult to drag this any further back because it's run out of adjustment room. We do want it to be further back, and I think it's kind of saying, nope, you've had your lot. So the question is, will it actually come out? And I don't rightly know the answer to it. We want to be able to get this out and turn it round. Ooh, maybe this is coming backwards. That's good. That surprised me. Well, would you look at that? Is it actually behaving? Right, spin it round. Put it in this way round, to give us a little bit of extra travel. I say a little bit, it's about 3.5 millimeters, so it's not an insubstantial extra bit of saddle travel, which makes all the difference. Why they made them this way around in the first place, I will never really know. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to follow the lead of this pattern, and we're kind of in line. It's about as good as it will get. I don't think we'll get any better than that, but that should be just about on. It's not exactly, oh no, I should be right actually. Come back to that in a minute. And we need to turn this one round. No, which one? That one. We don't need to turn it, we can just work that one. Come along, back you come. Judging by the positioning of these are actually 2 replacement screws. Now that one is past its mark already, so I think this one, technically they all need turning around because they're all slightly in the wrong place, which is always the way. It's one of the reasons I can't stand the old Tunematic bridge. Horrible thing, but still. Gibson swears by it. A bit of rusty old spring there, rusty old Springfield. Put that one back in the new correct way round. Put that rusty bit of spring back in there. In you go, friend. In you go, girlfriend. Right. These are all a bit old and worn, so we're not really going for good looks here, and the guitar's kind of road worn anyway. Right. Okay, this one should, if I can get a hold of it without the magnetised screwdriver pulling it out. Get in there. Right, come on. Right. So I'm going to pull this right back. I think it should be about there, and I think this one, looking at the actual physical position of this needs to come back too, but it can do, to about there. Actually it really should be about there. Tunematic. Tunematic, the world's lousiest technology. Still. Right, we still haven't cured the height problem, saddle height difference, but we can come back to that in a minute. This kind of guitar is not one that you really want to clean up either. It's got its sort of grubby mojo, and any tidying it up would more than likely lead things to flake off. Right, so the problem is this one is now off the mark. I'll take this one off, pull this one back, take that one off, turn it round. So back with the D, off with the A, spin it round, work off that. Yeah. Tunematic, dog's dinner of a bridge. And you come. Right. Plastic, that's all they are, little bits of plastic. Right, put that back in. So what they have is they've worn over time, and in wearing the string positions have moved by the looks of it. They may have been inaccurate from the outset, but it's clear that they're also wearing down. Now this is sticking to my thing, so it doesn't help us trying to get it to be accurate. You get wear on a metal one, but not as much as this. Okay, so now I'm going to sort of split this half and half. Can't really go any further. Even that, looking at that, the slot, the notch isn't really centre on the saddle, so a set of saddles would be a good idea here. So we'll just check this for close to intonation as we can get. And then we'll look at the height. I think actually a set of replacement saddles would be good. I mean, I've got tons of metal ones which we could change out. Now that's fractionally too far back. Okay, push it back, push it back, push it back. Try those. Okay, push that back fractionally. Okay, that's about nearly close to right. Okay, 2 tweaks of a cat's tail, back a tiny bit, back a tiny bit. That's a lot. This looks odd because one of them's the wrong way around to the others, but they're still in the right pattern. Okay, I'm going to have a look. I've got a few days to get this done. That's messing up the shape of this, which annoys me as well. Okay, it's intonated, but not ideal. So let's go over to the dark side, the other side, and let's take a look in there. Meanwhile, let's get a new jack socket. This is a Nutric jack socket, so it's a good quality unit. Don't need to do that, do I? So I think what I might do is order in some replacement saddles, just because they're wearing. We got a couple of problems. We've got the height difference, which is annoying, and then we've also got the side-to-side inaccuracy, which is caused by the wear as well. So it seems to me that it would be simpler to replace them than to try to correct them and dig deeper into the already worn plastic saddles. And they're, you know, yes, they're original, but they weren't a brilliant idea from the outset. Okay, this doesn't. Yeah, maybe a bit worn. Okay, let's just snip this off and make a new one. For which we will need some solder. Cheapest of parts on a lot of these things. This isn't the same quality as the 59 Deluxe thing, you know. It's sort of halfway-ish, but it's okay. It's still a very nice guitar to play. So we'll just strip off a bit of these, and then we'll get the soldering iron heated up. I was down in my local market the other day and I saw an ancient analog, well, they all are, but an ancient wire stripper from the olden days, and it had a little wheel on it that adjusted the gap. And this is really hard to get out. Come on. Yeah, it was a very mechanical sort of way of adjusting. I really like that. Instead of, you get the modern ones with lots of little preset hole sizes. And I've never been able to use them. I don't know why, I've just been hopeless at it. So I thought maybe I should buy it. I didn't buy it, but I regret that now because it was only £2 or something. I should have bought it and taught myself to use it. So plastic over the shoulder until the vacuum cleaner gets fired up. Okay, so we're going to lose. Let's lose. I'm going to lose the camera power while I use soldering iron. And if we run out, we just run out. That's the way it is. Fire up. Okay, let's put this together. Sometimes these aren't big enough for this type of thing, but that is, thankfully. And sometimes you have to actually drill them to get them to work. Now this is always subject to coming loose, the jack socket. Guaranteed. If something's going to come loose, it'll be one of these. That's the way it is. Right, we need some solder. Some solder, some fizzy stuff. Clean off the thing. Some solder on the wires. It's not very good view, is it, from there? But I can't get you no closer. Come along. Tin it, please, tin it. Do as you're told, tins. Thank you. Right. Never a very useful thing, these grabbing things, because they never have much to hold on to. So, yeah, maybe. Okay. So, let's cut these back first of all to a workable length. There you go. In there, stay there, something like that. Come along. Am I able to cut an excess bit off? Just. Now this actually feels like it's going into plywood, which is kind of, I don't think it is the case. Okay, what did I just do with the little screws? They're not there. Hello? What did I do with the little screws? They're right here. Right there where I left them. Yeah, it looks like it has the look of ragged ply, which I hope it isn't, because ply doesn't hold out very well, but it could be given the construction of this. We'll just do this up. Looks like somebody's fitted this a few times over. That should be alright. I might just quickly test it, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and look out for some better screws, because these have, oh, it's nice and solid there. These have definitely had their day. Okay, right, that's good. Okay, so I think I might just going to do some ordering because I need some bits and pieces, but I think this we could do with a set of, let's see if we can get some similar looking, it'd be nice to get Tusq actually. If we're going to put them on at all, it might as well be Tusq, they should last longer. Let's go and get some, try and find some of those, and we'll find some slightly larger screws to fit that. Okay, meanwhile let's just check what we're doing in terms of neck relief. That's enough, don't need any more or less, so let's just put this back on while we're about things. Okay, well that's some of the most of it done. One of the things that's just occurred, and that is because of the slight extra wideness of the nut, I'm going to need to just shave this down a little bit, because it's now, the nut is a little bit deeper than it was a minute ago, and as a result there's a little bit less room. Now, if you don't shave this down, there's a risk of it cracking, cracking the little bits where we're putting the screws into, because it'll be under a lot of pressure. Okay, this should be just enough. I think so. Let's have a look. Yeah, probably actually could do with a tiny bit more. I'm just using the blade for this. I could do it on the sanding beam, sanding block, but actually it's funny enough, it's actually easier to keep it straight by doing it by hand with the blade. He said, having learned the hard way, sorry you can't see that, having learned the hard way many times over. Okay, that's close enough for these little screws. Okay, good. What it's done is it's just thinned out the little white strip around the back edge there, so so it just fits here, fits back on without it being under any stress, because we don't want it to bust the little screw surrounds. It's funny enough that they can get quite brittle over the years, and when they're under pressure they just snap. Okay, before we run out of batteries, I'm going to hang this up, and we're going to leave it there for the time being, and go and get some bits. See you in a while.